Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of The Fishing Teacher, and much appreciated you guys spending some time with me today and checking out the video. We're going to be talking about February bass fishing today. We're going to be talking about what the bass do in February, sort of their mood and personalities, some techniques and tactics of how to catch them, sort of some of the areas they live in. Just going to give you guys some good foundational tips for catching them here in the month of February, which is the time of this video is going to be next week. Also, guys, before we get started, one of my favorite February lures, February and March lures, by the matter of fact, I want to share with you guys, is a brown and orange jig with a green chunk on it. This is my Blaukat throwback jig, living rubber jig, which that's what you want, guys. You don't want silicone is okay in some situations, but living rubber, like on the throwback jig, will get you a lot more bites. So I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description for the throwback jig if you guys want to try one out. Really appreciate that. Okay, February, man, it's when things start turning around a little bit. Fish start getting a little bit more active. Fishing usually gets a little bit better. Not necessarily because the water's getting that much warmer, because the waters a lot of times don't warm up significantly much more over January, but we're getting into a longer daylight hours. We're getting closer to the fish wanting to spawn. Internally, that primal cycle they have, it sort of gets them a little bit more active. So February can be a pretty good month of fishing. So today I sort of want to talk a little bit about what the fish do in February, what you want to look for, little bits and pieces of advice on where to find them at. Now, you guys know the channel here, we're traditional bass fishing here. We don't do the scoping and the all the cheater box stuff. So if you're approaching fishing from that point of view, seasonal patterns and movements don't mean anything. You're fishing for a specific population of fish out there off the bank that are just different than the rest of the fish in the lake. So I want to talk about real bass fishing techniques that require an understanding of seasonal patterns and movement of the fish. Now, this is getting to be a lost art form, guys, because when you're talking about seasonal patterns and movement of fish, it's something that you can't learn it real quick. It takes a lot of time on the water and a diversity of different waters to get an understanding about it. And that's the good thing about coming to the channel here, is I'm going to share with you guys a lot of the stuff I've learned. So it's going to make your learning curve go way down on that. Okay, first of all, when we're doing these fishing videos on the Fishing Teacher, it's hard to fit everything into, that encompasses all the lakes in the country, because every lake's different. You guys that fish down south have completely different environments than here in the Ozarks and vice versa. So for the most part, unless I talk specifically about southern lakes or northern smallmouth lakes, we're talking about most of the man-made impoundments in the lake that are just traditional man-made impoundments. Okay, so in February, you got a lot of different things going on, depending upon the water clarity in your lake. If you have a lake that has over, say, 3 or 4 foot of water visibility in it, in February, there's still a lot of fish that are suspended. Some are on the bottom, some are deep on the bottom, some are starting to move shallow. You got fish all over the place. If you have a little bit more off-colored water, like if your water visibility is under 3 feet, it limits those options a little bit more. You don't have quite the suspended fish. You don't have as many deep fish. So those fish are going to be a little bit shallower in February, even if the water's cold in that off-colored water. So I sort of want to talk a little bit about my favorite techniques to catch bass in the month of February in both clear water environments and more stained water environments. Now, if you're fishing stained water environment in February, your fishing is always going to be better when your water temperature starts to get closer to 50 degrees. If you live in a part of the country where you have water temperatures in the low 40s, unless you have grass in your lake like hydrilla and milfoil, fishing's probably going to be pretty tough if you have off-colored water. One of my favorite ways to catch them in the month of February, if you do have off-colored water, say your water visibility is anywhere between 1.5 feet to maybe 3 foot, is a flat-sided crankbait in some type of a shad or crawdad pattern. This is a great way to catch them that time of year. And in February, for me, it's usually just about rock or gravel, something like that. I don't really target wood that much in February. It seems like the bass relate to rock a little bit more. So try taking a flat-sided crankbait, like either some type of a homemade flat side. That I use that Megabass Sonic side and the Megabass Flap Slap. That Fritz side by Berkeley is a good crankbait. But just get you a flat side crankbait and go up into some of the creek arms of the lake you're fishing and just start cranking rocky banks with it. It's a good way to catch them anytime that water temperature is over about 47 degrees. It's going to work in, upper 40s to low 50s is going to be a really good way to catch them in February. If your water visibility is closer to 3 feet but not over 3 feet, a jerk bait may come into play. You can still catch them on a jerk bait a little bit shallower on those same type of areas. But for you guys that have water visibilities of over 3 feet, which a lot of lakes do in the wintertime because usually the water's a little cleaner in the winter, you got to decide if you want to fish for suspended fish or, the deeper fish or the fish that are just on the bottom. Now, my number one bait in February, for the most part, not all the time, there's situational changes with that, is a jerkbait. A jerkbait is really good in the month of February. Fish are starting to move up a little bit shallower. Usually I target either secondary and main lake points, especially if they're spotted bass in the lake. If they're spotted bass in the lake, that's a really good way to catch them. If I don't have many spotted bass in the lake and it's a lot of largemouth, I just get on those channel banks, the steep rocky banks, and just parallel those things with a jerkbait. Really good way to catch them. Also, an Alabama rig is a good way to catch them, especially if you have some type of windy, cloudy day. Alabama rig will outproduce a jerkbait in a lot of those situations. Now, another good way to catch them, again, we're talking about rocky banks, is something like a wigglewort or a rock crawler in February. That's when they start biting that crawdad wigglewort really good, is in usually February. So if you got water visibilities of over 3 feet, get you some type of a crawdad, rock crawler, or wigglewort, parallel those rocky banks, really, really good way to catch them with that. If the water temperature starts to rise into the low to mid 50s, which sometimes you can get that sometimes in the end of February, try slow rolling a big spinner bait on those same type of rocky banks or chatterbait. That type of stuff can work really good. And finally, a technique that I like if fishing's a little bit tougher is fishing a little like a 2.5 inch swim bait, like that little Kitech swim bait or that Megabass 3-inch spark shad. Usually on some type of 1/8 ounce jig head, or I use that core tackle hover rig head quite a bit too, and target those fish that are suspended out on those secondary and main lake points with it. So you got to think in terms of where the bass are going to stage at. In other words, if you don't know what staging is a term where the bass move into position to start getting ready to spawn. And those areas are usually the steeper banks, the steeper rocky or gravel or clay banks that are close to spawning areas, but not into the spawning areas. That's usually your best areas for the month of February. And one little bone I'll throw to you guys that have grass in your lakes, all you guys that fish some of the TVA lakes or Florida or whatever, fishing a lipless crankbait or a jerkbait over the top of those deeper grass beds can be really good. Lipless crankbait, another one, guys. Aside from working over grass, a lipless crankbait can also work good in February, just fishing along rock, especially if you got some flatter rock. Works pretty good for that. So anyway, that's just sort of an overview of it. I know that's a little quick one there, but that might get you started. And we'll try to break down more specific techniques as it gets farther along in the month there. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.